CPC models that I've been involved with, the most successful ones are the ones that had direct and complete local involvement from the beginning, and all through the process, had engaged people so that when it finally came up for let's say for final review, both at the commission and over at the assembly, it was it went through fairly easily. Those ones that were imposed top down, and I specifically remember the one in Sandwich, the one that involved the Wise, that was an imposition, and it wasn't until they reversed their activity, engaged the people, that they were able to find the support that they needed in order to move forward. Harwich was an example of everybody knew about it, everybody went to all of the meetings, everybody had an opportunity to talk about it, and it went through very smoothly. So I think we have a model there for successful implementation of something that is useful to the community.
And I think we have models and we have examples, and we have the county being not the ones responsible for, when you drive the project and you're in the weeds fighting all the firefights, it's hard sometimes to look over the wall and say, what's happening here? And the county has the ability to look at what's happening in all these places and say, you don't have to go down this road, but, we've looked at half a dozen cases, and, it's pretty clear that you go this way, you have a chance of getting to the end, and if you go this way, the likelihood is you're going to run into a dead end. You can do what you want.
The question I have for you at this point is, how come the present collaborative hasn't come up with that template? Because it's certainly to me, a reasonable outcome for the for the work that they were charged to do, that they would come up with a template and a table of this checklist.
Well, I think in fairness, I think we only now this year have enough of a sample of initiatives that have gone through the voter approval or the city council process to not be speculating, but to be able to look at 3 case studies that have occurred this year and see which ones moved forward and why, and which one didn't move forward and why, and be able to draw that conclusion.
You work at Gotlieb, right?
The county has hired Gotlieb.
No, but he would work with Gotlieb when he was up at that. I remember.
Yeah, he and I actually started the same month.
But anyway, what he said to us when we were in the beginning stages of this is that unless we could demonstrate that there was political will and support among the constituents and the voters in Cape Cod, the state had no interest in helping us whatsoever. And I remember that was the reason why we did we did all of the work of going around to the towns to show that we could have community support. Now that we've accomplished that, demonstrated that support, we're at a wonderful opportunity here. We're at that nexus of saying we could do these things, so that this review, the one we define what we want the review to accomplish, is
perfect time.
And just so you know, next Tuesday, Wednesday, I forget the date. I've got time set with the DEP commissioner to go talk to her about where we are, engage her in the discussion, because I got some interesting questions from DEP staff about, what does that Barnstable vote mean?
Right.
Does it mean you guys are backing away from this? And I'm trying to sort of frame the issue along the lines that I've framed for you guys today.
Right.
And no. Don't read into it that the political will has dissipated on the Cape. This is about a lot of important issues, but it's not about the need to pursue additional wastewater treatment, protective resources. So, we haven't had that full discussion, and I guess I'm going off a little bit on my own.
But there's one more thing that you could say in that, in terms of incentive, for the Up Cape towns, there's now more incentive than ever. The base is still very interested in building in allowing that treatment center to be built on the base. But putting up those 17 turbines will help defray some huge costs in operation and maintenance of that facility from an energy standpoint. And that's a huge, big piece of this budget, this financial model, to keep this thing up and running, not just to build it, but
people are talking about the capital side. When they talk about costs, they don't talk about the operating.
That's right. And so that wind farm on the base could produce significant energy to reduce the cost of building it there. So the 4 towns
in the work I've done
should
in
be
cities
more
and
motivated.
towns across the country, it varies based on size. Typically the largest energy user in municipalities, either the schools or the water wastewater treatment
Right.
facilities.
I made tons of money back in the 70s.
Yeah, so, it's a big rate driver.
Yeah, putting the bus stuck in sewers up and down Western Road.
And maybe that's another role of the collaborative too. What are the successes and what do they mean for the other towns? And like you said, and what are some of the...
And even the failures, you can learn. I mean,
and
failure is
so what-
something to learn from.
I would like
Absolutely.
like the Barnstable
Plenty of them
one.
to pick from.
It's not so
Yeah.
much a failure as a signal that financial models have to work.
Well, it depends how you read it. And I think not looking at the Barnstable case and really understanding what it was about would be sort of a systemic failure on all
Exactly
of our
right.
parts.
That's right.
To let it sort of say, oh, people don't want to do it, it's too
They don't-
expensive,
no,
so
that's
forget
right.
it.
Yeah.
Forget it.
And that might be what some
If
people
it's
there.
left alone, that's the
But
conclusion.
the organization
Yeah.
of the vote was, there's 13 separate, separate districts.
Yeah.
And the people were not voting as much as who showed up at the meeting in terms of moving it forward. So you really have to take into account the political issue of what was the motivation of the vote as opposed to whether it was looking at a judgment as to whether or not it was politically timely to do it or whether or not it was appropriate to make the capital movement. I'm talking to Mark Ellis. This is really the right time to go forward with it, and he certainly had engaged. I guess it was 1,900 people had been contacted, who were butters. But there's the issue, which is our issue, I think. This is a resource within the town of Barnstable that affects the whole town, not just the people that are butters to the
Right. I think that from what I read of that whole thing, the people were not really questioning the merits or the need so much as the way it was going to be carried out, and it was on the backs of a few.
Awfully expensive for a small number of people.
That's right. And then it's going to be, eventually it's going to be spread out. So each of, if everybody was looking at the fact that they were going to be hit with that, so there's going to be a different way of doing it. That is where we can help them in looking at what worked, what didn't work, and not letting the ball just drop there like, oh, they don't want to do it, so it won't be done, because there's no option. Andrew, what was I'm digressing for a second. There was a pond this week that had toxic algae blooms, right? That they said a dog could die.
Right. Well, they have that. It's in Harwich. There was one other.
It's right behind my house.
And then Mashpee and Santuit Pond, similar, that's occurred over the last couple of years.
So, I mean, these are
real.
These are
Happening in
real. That's
time.
real time, and people are going to. I mean, it's lethal. So we have got to address this.
Good Pond is another pond that gets a lot of aeration, so there's no turbation in the water. The result is you have a lot of what I'd call static development, and recently when we had the wind and you had churning of the biomass that was essentially dead, it was reoxygenated. That's what came to the surface, and that's what happened.
Right.
So if they had consistent use of the pond, so that it was, this water was naturally moving, it would have done a lot to prevent that.
But the reality is that, and this is true of Santuit and a lot of the others, these ponds are what they are, and they've been that way for a long time. There's a tripping point when there's too much nutrients, whether it's phosphorus or, and it puts them over tilt, and then they go sour. And, with the ones we're seeing now in freshwater, you're just at the beginning of that tripping point. So, there's things that can be done to bring them back, not solve the problem, but sort of get back on the other side. But there's no reason to expect that there won't be more of that because we're using our land
And
more
we, as a
intensively.
Cape, as a tourist region, in the summertime, some people love ponds and some people love the ocean, some people love both, but to be able to feel that you're not going to be able to go in there, or your dog died because it jumped in the water, they're not going to come back.
Right.
And it's going to be a very scary event. I found that a very frightening story. So this is something that we have to pursue. Let's get back to the structure of this. We will have, from our list here, we have George Bryant from the Assembly. Elliot Carr is a resident, And he has many...
Former president.
Former President Cape.
Chairman of the Business Roundtable.
Yes,
member of the,
that's right. He has many...
of the, Association
Many titles.
to protect
Yeah.
Cape Cod.
Yeah, he spreads across various groups. Gussie, and she has great experience.
Yes,
and
she has. Yeah, she has goes back to the WIC, which is the predecessor of the Wastewater Collaborative.
Mhm.
I was happy that she was willing to serve on that.
Elliot, George. Now, Jane and Pat and Larry are all collaborative
They're all
members.
current collaborative members.
Larry is he's not the most recent,
Yeah.
but you are from Harwich.
Oh, yeah. Larry
And
Ballantyne
you
just elected
are
to-
on there. That's Bill Doherty is the commissioner.
I think it would be good to have a commissioner, just speak for myself. But
Right. The way I saw it is that you would be sort of the chair and facilitator of this meeting, but you don't have a vote, correct? How does that sound? I mean, he could help guide.
Yeah.
He could help guide the
Yeah, because that would help with the charge as far as moving
right
the process
and
along.
keeping people on track and
Right.
focused as to what they're going to do. So
you know, depending
that's
if
fine
you end
with
up
you.
with an even number, if you want to, you know, only exercise of tie-breaking function.
Right.
Yeah, we could
That's
do that.
right.
We could do that in the composition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So many people have got so much.
So,
that we have
Fred,
Bill,
I
I
think
don't have
George.
you.
How about Fred Sherwood?
Oh yeah, then we have Fred.
Yeah.
That's right. He will be Chirigotis. He is the president of Barnstable Town. Maggie Geist expressed interest.
Well, I might mention that Elliot is also a member of the association.
He is eight. Yeah, it is the eight.
Well,
Okay.
except that she could be a family from a larger town. So what towns are actually represented?
Well, the three
P-Town.
We've got the Lower
Elliot,
Cape with
Prince
Gussie.
Just so
Elliot.
that there's some.
So there's a
Some
balance. Well, we have George down at the Outer Cape, so it wouldn't be bad to have someone. And then there was
Elliot's a rooster.
In Brewster, yeah.
Joe Carrera was put forward.
And
right,
Gussie,
born.
where's Gussie Armin?
Gussie's Orleans.
No, Joe was a deputy fire chief.
Right.
And was he going to have the time to participate?
I don't know if he would.
And Fred, I assume, lives in Barnstable.
In Barnstable.
He's also a former member of the Sunday Brotherhood.
Right. And how about Jane, Pat, and well, they're collaborative members. Jane, Pat, and Larry, where are they from?
I don't want to have too many collaborative members. I would
Maybe
rather just
three
keep it
is
to
fine.
two. Yeah, I would just want to keep it to two people. So it would be Gussie and
Right now, you only have Gussie.
we only have Gussie.
Oh,
We haven't made a
Jane,
decision.
Pat, Larry.
Now, Jane, tell us
Bill's
about...
on it, Bill Doherty.
Yeah, Bill Doherty, but he's not a collaborative person.
You know?
No, I'm the
Should we
collaborative.
get her on it? That's right.
But I'm stepping out of it.
However, I was the, was the
He was on
vice
the
chair
blue
of the
ribbon.
and I was an original member of, I think, was I an original member of the club? No, I never was.
No, you weren't.
And that's why I thought Bill would be a good choice, because he does have that perspective of how, when the collaborative was formed, what its charge was. You could come in with that, kind of give it a little report card from.
Yeah.
I mean,
From
the
that
list I have that you've got here is the town reps, I think, are George Bryant,
Mhm.
Gussie, who also has a dual
Right.
distinction of being on the collaborative. Did you say Florence Sullivan?
Florence Selden. Florence
yeah.
Selden. I'm sorry that she was
I thought I
put
heard
forward
you
by.
say that.
Yes, I did say that earlier.
Right, so those are...
And she's from Chatham, and she was put forward. She's a board of selectmen, which is good.
Five, six.
And then Joe Carrera was put forward by
Bourne.
town or Bourne. So that would be 4 town reps.
2, 3, 4.
Okay, and then the other ones you mentioned were Chirigotis, Carr, and Geist, and Bill, which would give you a membership of 8, 4 that are town reps, and 4 that are, chosen
At large,
chosen
at
by
large
you folks
citizens.
at large.
Right.
I have Fred, Elliot Carr, 2, Bill Doherty, 3, George Bryant, 4, Gussie, 5, Florence Selden, 6, and Joe Carrera, 7.
And
Right.
Maggie, and the other name that was out there was Maggie.
Oh, Maggie
Okay.
got
And
it.
Maggie Geist.
Yeah, and Fred
Maggie
Chirigotis.
Ice.
You'd have to-
Do you want to stick with 7? No? Do you want to put Maggie on it?
Well, you could put Maggie on it if you wanted to have that many people, and if there is a tie on a vote, that Andrew could then,
Not overly concerned that you're going to get
I don't
into
think, yeah, it's going to be a
Not fighting over
50-50
money.
split. No,
I
you're
think
not.
it's important to have somebody from the Upper Cape
Yeah.
because of,
Well, Joe Carrera's from Bourne.
well, that's
We'll put Joe on it,
But
yeah.
I think Maggie Grice would be a good
Well,
choice.
you get Bourne
Certainly-
and Falmouth there.
The
I mean,
APCC
residents of Bourne and Falmouth.
Right.
Yeah, that's right, they're residents.
I think
yeah.
that covers you.
Yeah,
Right.
You got a really good
And if
turnout.
Joe can't do it, then we still have.
I assume that he can. I mean, the input that I got from Peggy Fantazzi, who's the Bourne rep, when she told me that the Bourne selectmen had appointed him, and I think there were some conversations in advance that it wasn't out of the blue, that,
Right,
he
okay.
was
Okay.
willing to undertake the responsibility. So,
Now, the other thing that I think maybe we should think about is that the collaborative had asked what would their input be, and we might want to develop a form, a questionnaire for them to help them evaluate themselves, and they could write something up and submit that. And we might want to, when the final draft or before the final recommendation is made, depending on how you all want to work that out, have a public hearing.
I mean, what we could do based on what you're suggesting today is that you should try and do it in 3 or 4 meetings, one to sort of set the background and just provide an update on what's been done and accomplishments to
Right,
date.
gather all that
Have
stuff.
people have the opportunity to, come and contribute to that conversation as they see fit. A second meeting to sort of conduct a critical evaluation discussion of, based on the criteria you might give us, how's the collaborative done? And then you also use that discussion to take the criteria that you've given about your priorities on a going forward basis. Talk a little bit about how well set up it is to address those needs on a going forward basis. Again, open that up to public input. If anybody wants to come and have a conversation. Saying that, certainly.
That might be the time when interested members of the collaborative could show up and provide that.
Anybody could, it's a
Yeah,
public
yeah,
hearing.
yeah.
That's right.
And then a third meeting to sort of agree on findings, which would then be subject to a public comment process hearing. And then, hold open the prospect of a 4th meeting to just sort of verify, based on what we heard, anybody want to change course,
Right.
come to final agreement, and then submit something back to you folks in September at some point.
Right.
Close by.
Okay,
I think
how
it
much
would be great
administrative
to do.
support would you need in order to get this done in this period?
I'll just do it.
Okay.
Well, Carol will help. Well, you can schedule some places.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it'll work the way things are
It would,
working.
right,
I assume that
And
I'll pull together the agendas. I'll put together whatever information or guidance pieces that are needed to move things along.
And maybe what I can suggest is, I've been jotting down kind of based on the discussion what the criteria or the charge might be. Maybe what I'll do is put this down on paper tomorrow, distribute it. You guys can comment on it. We can kind of try to finalize that over the next week or so. Is that all right?
I would look to, I looked to the ordinance and basically how we even wrote, when we came on as commissioners, our letter, we basically looked at the charges they were given in that
Yeah.
ordinance as their job description. That
Right.
was what the,
Well, some
the
of the-
guiding principles were.
Some of the things that came out of here is a couple things. Is examine role of towns, counties vis-a-vis wastewater planning. We need to look at that. Help homeowners, businesses deal with costs associated with septic improvements in future sewer zones. Share planning lessons learned in project implementations. Maximize the ability of Cape communities to access water pollution abatement, trust funding within certain timeframes. Encourage actual project development / implementation for shared watershed projects, and identify issues that demand attention in the near future.
And one of those is the accommodation of people who have made commitments to individual solutions on, site-specific basis. When you try to, you're going for betterment, what type of relief would those homeowners have in order to keep them from being an impediment as we move forward?
Do you guys meet next week?
We made it Wednesday.
All right. So why don't you and I work up a set of criteria for evaluation and criteria for priorities going forward. And I think it would be good to get a formal vote of adoption of that, which I can then distribute in writing to people
Cool.
as we introduce this and say, you've been appointed, here's the charge, here's the schedule, and then we can convey that same message to the members of Collaborative and get rolling this month.
That's a good plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Mentioned we're talking to DEP. I mean, I think you all know the board reorganized at its last meeting. Cheryl Andrews from Provincetown as chair, Mark Ellis from Barnstable as vice chair. Steering committee membership changed a little bit. Sheila, John O'Brien, and Cheryl Andrews are members that go through the ordinance. And the Collaborative elected Larry Valentine and Peggy Fantazzi as two discretionary members for the steering committee. And we continue to meet on a regular basis monthly.
What is the term?
Can I have
Darn it.
Well, that's another thing we might want to look at as a term, and also a criteria, because there was an interesting, the argument for Gussie wasn't so much that, she had been at the helm a little, for, I guess, 2 years.
She became chair when Paul vacated to come to run the commission, which was late 2007, right?
Yeah, so a little less than
So
2
she
years.
completed his term, was elected in her own right for a full term in June of 2008 to run into June of 2009.
So it's a one-year
So it was
term.
a 1.5. Yeah, I mean, the board reorganizes itself annually.
Right.
But she had a 18-month stint. So.
Now, the argument is that she spent half the year away. And I think that is something that we should look at as well, as how many people, because, there are some people on that board, and some of which are our representatives that are not there. And although...
Quorum's a challenge for me. In the
yeah,
shoulder
quorum
season.
it is a challenge.
The bigger you are, the bigger the number, and therefore the harder it is to get there.
And there's a lot lost in conversation, even though you might have minutes of a meeting. There's a lot of other things that don't get put in there. I have a question for you. I met somebody from our water commission in Wellfleet today, and he was saying that now they're applying for federal monies as well to see where they can to do wherever they can put their money. And the Fed said if you get state funding, we don't give you federal funding. You're not eligible for federal funding. And I said, I'm not sure exactly how that went, but...
It depends. It's the answer.
Right. So maybe I encouraged them to call you, and I said, I really need you to speak to Andrew.
Yeah, typically, if you're getting the general federal
Welcome, everybody.
rule,
There's chairs over there.
general federal rule of the game is if there's a required local match, you get federal money. The money that you're using to match can't be from another federal source. It gets ambiguous if you're using state SRF dollars because the seed capital is federal, but the money that you get is actually state because they're levered out of state bonds. So it depends what program they're looking for and how they're trying to match it as to whether or not that limitation comes into play. So I can talk to them.
Okay, all right. I will make sure that...
And they may be looking for like NRCS, world
Emily
system.
and Alex Hay speak with you.
Yeah.
I think they're the two
Yeah,
chairs.
we can help. We can help.
Okay.
All right, so you and I can.
Yeah, I'll whip something together tomorrow, zip it off to you, and we'll get something done.
Okay. When do you guys meet Wednesday morning?
We're meeting
Yeah.
actually at the sheriff's, so we're not...
Oh, that's right. We're going to be in Bourne next week because we're going
Is
to
that easier for
We're
you?
going to start at 10 o'clock.
All right, we've got a collaborative board meeting that morning, so maybe what we'll do is you and I can settle on what it's going to be. You'll have it by Tuesday, and then you guys can just do what you want with it.
Right. Okay.
Tell me what it is, and I'll write it up.
Okay. Good. Great.
Great,
Andrew,
thanks a lot.
thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Our big tour that you've been pushing us to have.
Yeah, the big tour.
At 10 a.m.
Okay.